Super Carlin Brothers is now available in podcast form, sort of. Get every episode of Super Carlin Brothers in an audio format wherever pods are cast.
Hey, brother! And welcome, everyone, to our spoiler review of Encanto.
It feels like somehow slightly overdue, but also at exactly the right time.
Yeah, I don't feel like Encanto, like I saw it in theaters, but I was the only person there, and I feel like it didn't get the love it deserved right away, at least from a mass audience. Like I think the people who saw it really enjoyed it, but now it's been on Disney Plus for like a couple of weeks, and I feel like it's really catching like a serious second wind.
Absolutely, and it's interesting to like see it play out in this way. Like
Yeah.
I know last year when we were doing work on Soul, for example,
Yeah.
and it was like released on Christmas Day to everybody with Disney Plus. Like
Yeah.
everyone watched it, and
Yeah.
it was pretty amazing.
Yeah,
Like,
we came back and it was just like, boom, yes, everyone had seen it.
right. But Encanto coming out during these sort of like pandemic times where like the theater going experience isn't maybe what it will be going forward or what it has been in the past means that like it's this fantastic movie that came out and just didn't get seen.
Right. Ugh, it's like, ugh.
But
Now it's getting seen.
now it's getting seen.
Yeah.
Now we're going to do our spoiler review. I'm really excited to dive on in. Let's go. Hey, brother.
All right, so you have seen the movie within like the past 3 days.
Yeah.
Right. I
Yeah.
have not watched the whole thing through since theaters like the week it came out. So it might be a smidge fresher in your mind.
It's actually been a really funny experience where because it came out during my paternity leave, which was like the other big factor for me as to
Sure.
why like I just didn't have the opportunity to go and see it.
Yeah.
But the really interesting thing is that in office for the past month, I have been the only person who hasn't seen it. So everybody's been kind of like dancing around like details about Encanto with me, but now I am the one who has seen it the most recently.
That's
And
right.
I felt like I came into office and I was like, oh, and this and this and this and that and this and this, and everybody's like, I don't know.
There's a
Which
lot
part?
of madrigals.
There were a lot
Which
of
one was that?
Yes.
Yeah.
I can't promise I'm going to have everybody's name right off the cuff.
I got them all right here.
Okay, perfect.
At least all the people with powers.
Okay, so Encanto is sort of a like it's a very unique and interesting story about this Colombian family who basically like is the ultimate benefactor of a miracle.
Yeah.
After revolution forced the original Madrigals out of their town, and then the like grandfather Madrigal Pedro basically sacrifices himself so that the rest of like the community can get away, and that sacrifice ultimately brings about this candle of power and a magical house, which is kind of like an interesting like they almost feel like the same but
separate.
but very different entities.
It's weird, right? Because like the candle, like at one point towards the end, is like in danger of falling or whatever, and the house is doing everything it can to help get a human up to the candle, but it's like doing nothing to move the candle itself towards them.
Right. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And it's like the house is dependent upon the candle as well.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So I don't know, and it's like an interesting kind of magic because you have like Abuela, who is like the head of the household, who, as near as I can tell, does not have powers.
Right. That I think you're right. Like she does have like a glowing door.
She does have a glowing
Her
door.
name is on.
Right. So unless it's the case that the house itself is supposed to be this like earnest version of her powers, like does that make sense?
I guess, but it seems like the house has like a very specific relationship with like it has like its own character.
It does seem that way. It does seem that way. So anyway, what we learn about it though is that the three children who survive with Abuela are the parents of the children who are kind of like the main characters of the story.
Right.
Specifically, Mirabel and her two sisters, Isabel and Luisa.
Yeah.
I'm getting it.
You got it.
Okay. But within the family, everybody is not specifically born with powers. They reach age 5 where there is this like ceremony where your powers are ultimately revealed. And it's sort of in like this unique way where you go up, you like touch the door.
Like the house provides a door. Like it like creates a new magical space for you.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then that space is very uniquely and interestingly equipped to like provide you whatever you need to best
utilize your powers or whatever.
Exactly. Yeah. Which there's a line like very early in the beginning that's just sort of like overheard in the distance where I think someone's like, you need to clean your rooms. I don't care how big they are.
Yeah.
And it's sort of like a sentiment from like a parent or a grandparent where you're sort of like, of course, like,
right, yeah.
Doesn't matter how big your room is, you need to clean it. And then you finally like see inside one of the rooms and it's like,
oh, it's a whole jungle.
Whoa. Like,
good luck cleaning that.
I'm sorry, we're not cleaning the jungle.
Yeah.
Or the Cave of Wonder.
The Tower of Sand or whatever.
Yeah. In the case of Bruno. But I guess as we kick off into the story, what we discover is that our main character Mirabel, for whatever reason, when she reached her 5th birthday, she had the ceremony and everything. It's all exciting, and nothing happens.
Nothing happens. Gets no power.
Right. So you kind of like jump off with that, and it's very easy right away to imagine how Mirabel as a character is someone who might feel like isolated or left out.
Right.
Like in this family of people with special powers.
Absolutely. And like she has this like one talk with her dad at one point and he's like, believe me, I understand. Like because the people who have married into the family also don't have powers.
Right.
But like there is this sort of like, it's pretty different. Like you never had powers. You were never expecting to have powers. You joined people who did, but like Mirabel was always expecting them. And she did, not only does she not have them, but her not having them is like seen as an enormous failure.
Right.
Yeah, at least by the grandmother, especially.
Especially by the grandmother. And then it is like further doubled down on when she has a younger cousin who has basically shared a room with her for his first 5 years of life. Mm-hmm. And now we witness him go through and gain powers. And when I was kind of like reflecting back on the movie, this particular detail was one where I was like, it really shined a very bright light to me. And it's kind of a weird question based on the circumstances of it, but it was like, what was so special about Mirabel that she wasn't given something to make her special?
Right.
Because not only has every other family member before her had these powers, but now also someone after her.
Yeah, it wasn't like she was the first person to not get them because like maybe that was just the last gift or something.
Right.
Like maybe that was it. Like this was all the magic had to give. You got your powers. Great. Good job, family.
Right.
It's like, nope. It did skip Mirabel on purpose.
Right. Which is like a very interesting choice by the writers because they easily could have told you everything and they could have let you really be excited for this 5-year-old to see like what her power was going to be. And then basically just like crush you with the disappointment, which was the realization that like she didn't get it. And then just tell the story from there because this youngest member of the family who has the ability to like speak with animals is like, it's like, you get to see that. It's a really cool power. He like clearly has like all of this confidence infused into him, but like it doesn't end up being a huge portion of the plot.
Not
like,
really.
It's not critically important. So what I really, really, really think they did is they wanted to be able to have that scene where the abuela goes up to the little boy and she's like, "You're so special. This is an absolutely perfect day." And you just get to sit there with Mirabel and watch as like a grandmother is
it's
doting.
Exactly what it is. It's like, it's because if someone else gets a power, then it's like, it's like Mirabel's last hope is that like it wasn't her.
Yes.
And it's like it was the miracle itself. Like it wasn't anything personal, but it turns out it's like
no, it's
like it's the real catalyst for everything starting to happen.
Right.
Sort of, because then there's also the prophecy, which was already sort of the catalyst. But then you get into this weird situation where it's like, how long was the plan in the making for Mirabel not to have powers? Like right out of the gate, even with Bruno, giving Bruno the power to see the future, and he immediately sees a future where Mirabel like breaks that. Like, how immediately did the grandmother start like faltering away from like the real point of the miracle, and like was like the magic trying to correct her for a very long time with this like long-winded plan or something?
Right, because, and I think you're asking a good question too, because ultimately what we're starting to realize is that like this family who is absolutely like the heart and soul of this town, they are like the providers, they are the people who, they're like small celebrities, like almost like a layer of like royalty, even though it's not necessarily like super that way, but you start with like these little kids who are like we want to know about your powers, and
Yeah.
like they're all sort of like standing at the gate of the house, like looking
do you
in,
do?
like what will the thing be? You're starting to lay the groundwork for this family that on the outside seems perfect, and like all of these characteristics that these people have make them special, and like who would ever not want that like level of special? Like
Right.
what could be wrong with the world? And I think most specifically you have it with like Isabel, who's like specifically referred to as the golden child.
The golden child, but that's also like they definitely do the thing with specifically Isabel, Luisa, and Mirabel, where they like assign them like very classic like first child, middle child, youngest child,
Sure.
like power or situations or wherever, where
Sure.
she's like the golden child and nothing's ever wrong, and Luisa feels all the responsibility in the world and she has to like put everything on her back, and that Mirabel feels left out, and like she is constantly overshadowed by her elder siblings.
Right. And so here's what I think that this movie did like so absolutely exceptionally well is there's the thought that I think you could easily fall into, that the intended character for you to be able to relate to would of course be Mirabel. Like you're supposed to be Mirabel in this situation. You're supposed to be able
You're
to like
right.
understand everything
Yeah.
from through her eyes.
Or else relate to whatever your birth order was.
And that is entirely possible
Yeah.
because like I would say, so the first song that we get that offers like some insight that like maybe not all is well, or maybe that the pressure of having these powers is overwhelming, or even the idea of questioning like who I am without these powers, starts with Luisa's song.
Yeah.
Which like, I swear hits me so ridiculously hard.
Right.
Like it is definitely the one that I think when even on the first pass, as I was watching it, I was like, man, like a lot of this is like,
Yeah.
you know.
And sure enough, Louisa is the middle child. However, which you are as well. So I would say that what's interesting is that like I thought going in like that might be the case. Like will I relate more than with like Isabel? Because like but like as they go through each of the songs, and I think this is sort of the point of the movie and like what they're trying to get across is that like I super related with Mirabel and Luisa and Isabella.
Exactly.
And I was like, all three of these are like so legit, and I have so been here on all of these occasions.
Yes.
And it was like, that's the point though. Like that's I think what they're trying to say is that like Mirabel feels left out because she doesn't have the powers, but even the people with powers feel these enormous burdens, and it's like it doesn't matter what side of the fence you're on. Like it's all these situations are kind of real for everyone.
Yes.
Either way.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, and like I wrote down some of the specific lines I think from like Luisa's song, but yeah, you've got like I'm pretty sure I'm worthless if I can't be of service, which is like so hard to to hear that thought. Like
yes.
As if your worth is like so specifically tied to this one thing about you.
This isn't like a critique necessarily, but it was like a weird emotion I'm curious if other people had, or like you're watching the movie and like I really loved all the songs. They were like all really good and catchy, and it's like Lin-Manuel Miranda and you're having fun, but like it's like the songs are very fun, and even like visually they're sort of like surreal and like imaginative and stuff, but at the same time you're like, this is so real. Like
yes,
it is like I'm enjoying myself, but oh my god, this is serious.
Yeah, it's like I'm in therapy right now. I'm like, you're seeing into the core of my soul.
I know.
And then the other one that got me from that same song and same note is, if I could shake the weight of expectations, would that free up some room for joy?
Yeah.
And it's like,
woo,
crap. So, but my underlying point is exactly what you said too. Yeah, it's like, it's not that the story makes out the whole family to be these characters who like look down on Mirabel or shun her or anything like that. It's like what you realize is that they're all super struggling.
Yeah.
Because there is this expectation of them being strong or being perfect or whatever the case may be.
But it's like it's all the same thing, which is that they're all like faltering under the expectations of the grandmother.
Right.
And like Mirabel doesn't have any power, so it's like very clear that like she's the one that stands out, especially like I'll never be good enough for you or whatever. But like the same is true of the people with powers, like Luisa she has this magnificent perfect power where she's super strong and can like literally lift churches and mountains and stuff. Right. And it's like it's still not enough for the grandma. And it's like the same with like I guess Isabel. It's like she's still not perfect enough.
Yeah.
Even though that's like almost literally her power.
Right. And I think that like that's sort of her thing too, because she doesn't feel like she's doted on. She like everybody in the town loves her. She is your very classic like Disney princess even. But like what you ultimately learn about her is that like, she's only ever made roses because she's always been expected to be like beautiful and perfect. And like she can't say she doesn't want to marry the obvious like hunk of the town or whatever, because that would be going against the hopes of the household. But
what's interesting is that no one turns it into like resentment though.
Oh, that's true.
Like at the end of the day, like she's still like willing to sacrifice her own joy for the family.
Right.
And like Luisa's like, I just won't be happy and I'll do it for the family.
That is true. It's a very like internal struggle. Like it's not like what you're ultimately realizing. Like the abuela is the catalyst for all of these characters feeling this way, but it is not the case that all of the characters come together against her.
Right.
It's like they're all just trying to like overcome these emotions. And so the thing that I would say, and this is like maybe where I could like scrape the edge of a critique a little bit, is that I think you get a small amount from the grandmother, like where Mirabel's singing the song in the beginning and she gets up to the front gate and like the grandmother like cuts in and she's like, Mirabel, what are you doing? Like, and it's like, why would you, we're all preparing for the celebration. Why would you be out there singing a song? And then she comes inside and she has like prepared, like, because she doesn't have like an ability, she has clearly put energy into like handcrafting these things as like her contribution, which then like promptly catch on fire or something. And the abuela is like, can you just please stay out of the way? Mm-hmm. So you get like these like little touches of that sort of like position of the grandmother. But I would say one thing that feels like it was maybe not made as clear, especially on my first pass of the movie, is I myself as a viewer wasn't completely made aware that all these characters were feeling this way because of the pressure from above or even from their direct parents in any way, shape, or form. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So I like then the movie doesn't really shy away from exposition at all. I mean, the
opening song is just like, all right, here's everyone. There's a lot of people. Keep up.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. It's like, it's very, very on the nose. And then, but pretty much every character tells you, the audience, that they're struggling, but in these fantastic, Lin-Manuel Miranda songs.
Right.
So that was like one area where it was kind of like, oh, okay, like where or how or why, like, because it is very much presented as if like the family loves going out and like helping the neighbors build their homes and like developing this little metropolis and being a part of the community and all of that. Like you can see that they're all very busy and that they're all executing their roles.
And I think they do enjoy it. It's just that like they don't feel free to enjoy anything else.
Okay, yeah. Like that's a good point. Yeah, like to go and like live their own life.
Right.
There's this recognition of the sentiment that's going on and sort of eventually trying to like put the pieces of the puzzle together as you get like the big Bruno piece. But before we get there was one thing about it that I felt like maybe was missing from the story. Again, going back to that question of like what made Mirabel so special. And the reason, and again, I feel like it's a funny way to ask the question because it's like, what made her so special that she didn't get to be special?
Right.
But when I compare it to a story like Moana, I think you've got like a lot of similar beats, which is sort of like Moana is growing up on this island where she is cutting away from the grain a little bit.
Right, like there's a lot of expectations on her, but she feels like a call in a different direction.
Exactly. Yeah. But and you ultimately discover, like that the ocean has like chosen her as like the person to go and like return the heart of Te-Fiti. But we do get that scene that is like very small. It's not like super over the top or anything like that, but where you see a baby Moana in like this very like pure state going and rescuing the turtle. And the turtle actually has like, the spiral on its back that sort of, I think is supposed to symbolize the fact that it was like her first. It was her test.
Was like the ocean's test for her, right? Because that's like the heart of Te-Fiti is the spiral on it and stuff.
Okay, but so all I'm saying there though is that like you get this thing where Moana completely left her own devices, like not being guided or advised or anything. This is just like, what would Moana do given no other anything? And what she does is rescue the turtle. And the rescuing of the turtle is sort of this like very symbolic, like you are one with, you know, the nature or life or helpfulness or whatever the case may be. And the ocean then selects her as like the one to go and go on this quest.
Right.
I feel like that is the thing that on some level I wonder about Mirabel, where it's like, and I think that there is an explanation, but I'm curious if you would see it the same way.
Okay.
Was there something special about Mirabel that, having been the one with no powers, like she was not given powers because she was uniquely equipped to otherwise be the one to like come in and rescue the family and show?
I want to say yes. Like, because she doesn't have powers, she's suddenly then able to empathize in a way with everyone who's struggling with with the burdens they feel.
Right.
Like in a way that the other characters are not.
Well, so what I was going to ask though is that because what we ultimately discover is that these other characters are also struggling with burdens, is it Mirabel uniquely, or could Mirabel be given the power of strength and Luisa would have been the one to do it, or Isabel would have been the one to do it if she didn't have powers? Like, because what you're seeing is that despite having the powers, they're all basically coming to the exact same place, which is like this sense of pressure and expectation. So my question ultimately becomes, is it the case that Mirabel is uniquely capable of doing this job and is special for that? Or is it the case that any of them, based on just the goodness of these characters in general, would have also done that thing? So the question is almost not like, it's not like this question of why was Mirabel chosen for this quest? It's mostly like someone was going to be chosen for this quest. And whoever that ultimately ended up being would be the one who would just ultimately develop this compassion.
Yeah, it's like I think it's like a question of like, yeah, would anyone, like, if like Luisa had been like the one to not get powers, and then Mirabel had gotten like the strength, would she suddenly have, or did Mirabel need to be uniquely positioned as like the youngest child at the time? I guess it would have been very similar though, because Mirabel just would have been the next one to come through.
Exactly. Yeah.
I don't know. There is like the little conversation at the very beginning when the grandmother is discussing the expositioning to Mirabel, like how the Encanto came to be or whatever. And like, she tells her she's like really special or whatever, like right up front. Right. So it's like, that suggests there was something about her before they found out about the powers that was like, oh, we're really excited about you or something.
Like there's like an innate goodness.
Yeah, there's like an innate goodness about you. But then it's also like the grandmother's obviously just super hyped on powers, and it is like ceremony night. So
right. Yeah. Well, and so you could ultimately make the argument that like the house didn't have to, like, again, if she is special or unique in some way or uniquely equipped to do this job, she didn't need to be given powers because she already had a power, which you could say is compassion, which I think like out here in the real world is like a very relatable idea.
Yeah.
Like you could almost say the ability to empathize with others, the ability to have compassion for others in the real world, in a world without like superpowers.
Yeah.
Is a superpower.
I mean, and she does have like really like strong and effective compassion. Like after Luisa sings her song, she's like, I think you're carrying too much. And like Luisa breaks down immediately.
And like gives her like a huge hug.
Yeah. And then same thing with Isabella. She's like, I was only marrying him for the family. And she's just like, what?
Right.
Like, she had like no idea.
Right.
And it's like, as soon as she's like, we need to bring it in.
Right. Yes. She's immediately like, I did not know that, but now that I do, I get it, and let's fix that.
Yeah.
And then you have just a very inventive song.
It's a fun one.
Similarly, I think even with the youngest child in the family, what you really see is that because Mirabel hasn't had these powers, and because she's maybe been like stuck in that nursery with him to watch him grow up, it's like she has developed such a unique relationship with him that like when it comes down to it, when he's about to go up and touch the door, he doesn't want the people who have experience touching the door. He wants the person who didn't have the power.
Right.
Like she is the one who was able to, by not having this power, really develop that special relationship
Right.
with him.
Right.
Which I think you could argue is just as meaningful as the ability to like carry a donkey.
But then the question is, if she had just gotten her power, would he have even been as nervous in the first place?
There's also that very question.
Right.
Yeah. Like she does establish the precedent for the idea that
You might not get it.
you might not get it, and maybe he even fears not getting it by way of having witnessed how she is treated in the family for not having powers.
Right.
So it's really like, I would say this is the only thing about the movie that I felt like either could have been explained or maybe I could better come to comprehend that big why Mirabelle question.
Mm-hmm.
I would say that is like the only area where I was left with. And as I was typing out my notes, the best thing I was ultimately able to come down to is maybe that's the whole point. Maybe none of them were uniquely special to carry this burden. Just someone had to. And so what we witness is the story where it's Mirabelle.
Right.
And that's it.
And she rises to the occasion.
But the hope or thought might be that anybody would have if placed in a similar situation.
Right.
But then moving on from there is the whole Bruno situation.
Yes.
Which is like, this is another one where I was curious about like, what is the message here? Because what I wrote down is like, is it a don't kill the messenger type of idea? Like
it is very, when they sing the We Don't Talk About Bruno song, it is like everyone is giving him such a bad rap for like, it's like a very shoot the messenger kind of thing. Where it's just like the one person says like, he told me my goldfish was gonna die, and then the next day, boom, dead. It's like, he didn't make that happen.
Right.
He just saw that it was going to happen and told you, and then it happened.
Right.
Yeah, but they keep blaming him for like making these things happen.
Right.
And it's just like, oh yeah. So that it's like it's a weird kind of misunderstanding.
Right.
But then even his like Mirabelle vision, it turns out is like has two branches to it. Like it can go either way.
True.
Yeah.
And what's interesting about that too is that like during that same song, like we don't talk about Bruno, Dolores, who has like the super hearing, she says that like the fate that he told her is that like her true love would be just out of reach marrying someone else.
Yeah.
And then as you see the story play out, it feels very obvious that future, that fate that is supposed to be sealed is that Isabel is going to marry the village. Mariano, yes. Yeah. The village hunk, as I've only been able to call him.
I only know because I was just rewatching some of these scenes.
Okay.
Yeah.
But what ultimately comes to pass is that this one is wrong.
Right.
You know, like, which is kind of interesting because when you hear it in the beginning, it's like, oh man, like that's so sad, like with all these other things that's going on. But in the end, it's not even accurate.
Right.
So,
it's like what did he like? You can imagine what he saw. But it's the question of like what part of the vision did he see?
Right.
You know, like I imagine, like I don't know. What I imagine is what Bruno's vision was Mariano like about to propose to Isabella.
Exactly.
And it's like that's what he saw, and he was like, oh no.
Right.
Like this is what's gonna happen. It's like, and the moment where he's on one knee about to do it does happen. But like it's interpreted wrong.
Exactly.
And it's even the same thing with Isabel's fortune, where it's like she's like, he told me my powers would grow and flourish and I'd be exactly who I wanted to be. And like in her mind, that means I'm just gonna be the best, prettiest person in the world. And it's like, in the end, they do grow and flourish, and you are exactly who you actually want to be, but it is not what you thought he meant.
That's very true.
Yeah.
It's very true.
Yeah.
Yeah, so those, I feel like there could be some possible like theorizing that could happen as you go through and dissect each of those like predictions as foretold by Bruno. And I think the big question that came down to for me with Bruno is that like when you really find out like what's happening, you feel so bad for him because you discover that he's just like, he loves his family. Like he only left because he felt like that's like what everybody wanted him to do, and he didn't actually leave. He was living inside of the wall with like a plate carved into a piece of wood at the end of the table so he could have dinner with his family, which is just like
so sad,
heart-wrenching. But yeah, when you hear all of these things that he kept telling people, all these prophecies, it's almost like did he not know how to use his power? Was he like abusing his power? Did he not know that these things would come across him negatively?
Right.
Like,
was he like trying to warn people?
Exactly. Yeah. And I guess with is it Peppa?
Yeah, his sister Peppa.
His sister. It's like you ultimately discover that like even his prediction of the hurricane at her wedding wasn't a prophecy at all. He was just like, you just look nervous.
Yeah.
That's all. Like, I wasn't trying to.
Yeah. It wasn't like, it looks like I think he says like, looks like a storm's a brewing or something, right?
Right.
And like, to her, that obvious, I mean, if you know her who has weather-based powers, all he might be saying is like, you look like you might be about to cause a storm.
Right.
Are you okay?
Right.
And because she thinks his power is telling the future or creating the future, I guess.
Right.
Like she's like, well, now I'm so nervous that it is going to be a hurricane.
Right.
Yeah, and then it like manifests it. So.
And that in particular, I thought that her character, while not super delved into, nor is Mirabel's mother, the idea of having this like rain cloud or sunshine or whatever the case may be that follows you around is such a very interesting way to imagine like an anxiety spiral.
Oh yeah.
Because it's definitely one of those things where it's like if you were to like feel nervous and then look up and see a cloud forming and then that makes you feel more nervous, which makes rain start falling, which makes you more nervous, which makes thunder strike. You know, it's like you can very easily see the compounding interest that is anxiety, like finding its footing inside of your brain.
Right.
You know, it's a very visual representation of like things are getting worse and then things are getting worse. And because things are getting worse, things will get worse.
Yeah. And her eyes look like it rains on her a lot. Like she's kind of got the crazy eyes going.
She definitely, she definitely looks a little bit tired, maybe.
A little tired.
Now, this is sort of like a random question that I actually don't know the answer to.
Okay.
But one of the things that I did notice about a lot of these characters is that it almost seemed like there were tiny nods, and it could be the case that it's supposed to be that Mirabel is supposed to be like an outlier when it comes to your expectation of a Disney princess. Mm-hmm. Very, very stiffly contrasted with Isabel, who I think very clearly like is what you might imagine as a Disney princess.
Yeah.
But I noticed that like Peppa, for example, is wearing like this like very yellow dress that is very reminiscent of like Belle. Mm-hmm. And I noticed that Isabel, for example, is wearing a color that is very reminiscent of Rapunzel.
Right, she got like, the flowers in her hair and stuff.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then I think like the mother is sort of wearing like a blue tone that is very similar to Jasmine. So I am like somewhat curious if this is just quite literally a coincidence and a very like appropriate color palette for like a Colombian environment.
Sure. Or
if all of these like little things are intended to be like tiny little nods to the various Disney princesses.
Yeah, I mean, I think it could be either or both. I think partially what they were doing with the color palettes was to like help you, the audience, just visually separate the like individual families within the family. Sure. Like the one, like Peppa's family is all like sort of wears yellow, and Mirabel's family all sort of wears like the blue or the purple or whatever. But I also do think, it's like, I do think there is something to that because like in any other Disney movie, like Isabel would probably be the main character.
Right.
Right. Like the heir apparent, the actual princess of the family, the one who's like literally perfect. But it's not. And so like she looks like the traditional Disney princess, but Mirabel is the main character.
Right.
And like Mirabel is also just the normal one when like there are other characters who sort of like give you like other princess vibes to the other actual Disney princesses.
Sure. Oh yeah. I even felt like Dolores maybe had like a slight Tiana like vibe to her.
Sure.
Maybe like similar category.
Okay.
Not the same outfit though.
No.
And then you do have there's two other small things that I had noticed about this. There's one small child at the beginning who's like asking Mirabel about her powers, who I swear is the same animation rig as young Anna from the original Frozen.
Oh, the little girl who's like, maybe your gift is denial.
Yeah. Like that looks like a dead ringer. And then Bruno has like a hilarious line in his song at the end when he's finally like explaining things, and he says like, "Let us know, let it go."
Yeah, that's a straight up Frozen Easter egg right there.
So it'll be kind of fascinating to continue to peel through the details of this movie and see if you can't find these little references.
Little other Easter eggs. Okay, so on that note, I like you were talking earlier about Moana and like the spiral on the turtle's shell. Okay, so this is something I almost need to go back and look at it. But whenever you see the candle, it's sort of like also like there's little like glowing things coming off of it at all times. And they're a little bit out of focus, but sometimes they float into the focus. And I swear on the little glowing things is the spiral. Or like there's like little spirally looking things on it.
That is very interesting. There have been a couple of small details about this movie that have given me like Disney multiverse type of vibes.
I mean, certainly like the golden candle and the golden flower feel very, like right there. And like the golden flowers in Moana. Yeah.
Right. And yeah, I agree with the spiral. And then even this is like a very like, freeze frame type of detail, but as she's walking through Bruno's hallway towards like the round door at the end where she ultimately finds the prophecy, along the wall are some characters that are like etched in, and one of them is this like big brawny character that has like the spirals on it that gives me like Super Maui vibes.
Right.
And Maui, similarly to this situation here, is a mortal human who is made into a demigod by the gods.
Yeah.
And similarly here, it's like they give you this like backstory as to like, the grandfather Pedro who ultimately goes back and sacrifices himself to prevent the horsemen from being able to catch up. In not so specific detail other than just like this idea that like he stayed behind. And because of that sacrifice, it's like this family is then granted some kind of magic.
Right.
There's also direct reference to Hercules inside of it, although the likeness is in no way similar to
the Disney Hercules. But I mean, there's like Cerberus and you see him.
Right. The inside of Bruno's tower, I felt like had very like Cave of Wonders vibes about it. Like all the stairs going up to the top is just like Aladdin going up the stairs. And then even the sand sort of like crashing in is very similar to like the lava filling, the Cave of Wonders.
Eventually the Cave of Wonders just turns into a big pile of sand.
That's true.
Yeah.
Yeah. The Cave of Wonder is in the sand.
It is sand.
It is sand. So yeah, it feels like there are these like tendrils in so many different and very subtle directions going to just all other Disney stuff.
Yeah.
Which is really cool. And I think the way that it's done is like subtle enough that it is not distracting.
Yeah, it's like I don't know if it's like if it's supposed to be drawing nods to it, or if it's just supposed to be like you put these elements in there and it just feels like a Disney movie. Like these are like the touchstones of this makes this animated movie a Disney movie because it was made by the same people, sort of thing.
Right.
Yeah. Which, by the way, I almost like they have like Lin-Manuel Miranda doing the music for like Moana and this movie, and I think Little Mermaid, the live action one coming up, right?
Okay.
Maybe? I don't know.
I can't confirm that, but that's
I don't know. It's very reminiscent of like Alan Menken doing like all the Disney Renaissance music. It just feels like there's this like behind the scenes intangible through line between the movies that don't necessarily have anything to do with each other.
New Disney. Yeah. But so I wrote down the exact same thing because I feel like the Lin-Manuel touch to these movies, you're exactly right with the Alan Menken connection. Like I feel like someday people will not know how unique this sound is now. Because I think Lin-Manuel is basically building a whole new style of sound for performances.
Yeah, right.
And I think it will be contagious. I think we will see more of it. I think he will be like the forerunner to a new, I don't even know how to describe exactly what it is that he does. This like kind of hip hop injected.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
Yeah. It's like it is so incredibly distinct, but also it continuously, like with Moana and Encanto, just it works. It works so well, and the songs are so catchy.
But they also feel like they're like paying homage to like the heritage of the culture the songs are about.
True that. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, but then like with like the little hip hop rap flair in there as
Right,
well.
right.
Like ooh, very good.
Yeah. So I've been super enjoying that, and I am excited to see, and I am hopeful that we will continue to get just more of it.
Yeah,
as we go forward.
I'm sure we will.
So I think all that being said, I mean, it feels like we liked the movie.
I liked the movie a lot. Yes,
I like the movie a lot. I have already ordered the soundtrack on vinyl for my house.
There you go.
That was the other thing I was going to say about the music is I know next to nothing about music, but I feel like the only test or measurement that I have for defining good music in a movie is if it is catchy the first time you hear it, which I feel like is probably in a lot of ways the goal of many of these animated movies throughout history. But yeah, I mean, the fact that I'm like literally in it, like I'm in the song the first time.
Right.
And I can't wait to go back and listen to it again. It's like, that's the best I got. On the Ben Carlin scale, it has a 10.
Good job, music.
Way to go, music.
You did it.
And with that too, it felt like a very Disney movie. It felt like the music was a huge part of the movie.
Yeah.
It's really like, even as I was prepping for this review, I went through and just listened to every song again, and the plot moves forward in such huge ways.
Yeah.
Every time they
sing. With the songs.
Yeah. So yeah, on the whole, I loved it. I think it's a really, really great movie.
Same.
I think there's like some super cool messaging in there. I think it's going to resonate with a lot of people.
Yeah, very like positive like mental health messaging, which seems to be something Disney is like actively going for. Like it was a very similar message to like Frozen 2, which was just like this like the weight of the weight of what you feel is expected of you versus who you really want to be.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I mean that's exactly what Elsa.
That's exactly Elsa's storyline in Frozen 2.
Right.
So.
Which, I mean, it makes you wonder with that, too, is that, like, I think that we're a generation of people where it does feel like there's been a lot more noticing, recognition of, like, the impact maybe even of social media, the end result of, like, depression or anxiety.
Well, that's Anna's storyline in Frozen 2.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and so what I had actually written down with Encanto is that I think the idea of these strengths, I think, is actually in the way that Mirabel may see them as, from her perspective, everybody having these things that make them so special. I feel like that actually is a really good metaphor for social media, where so often everybody is posting the thing that they're proud of, like the thing that is their strength, the thing that they are good at. They posted it because it's good.
Right, like everyone's timeline looks very perfect.
Yes, yeah. So everybody comes across as impressive. And so if you find yourself looking at all of these people and only ever seeing the highlight reel of their life, then despite the fact that no one person might be attempting to say like, hey, look how perfect I am, it could be the case that your 50 friends may all embody 50 different strengths. And because they all have those strengths in a way that might be greater than yours, you feel inferior in every way.
Right.
And so that was like a big takeaway that I had from, like, if you wanted to try to get into Mirabel's head and apply it to like us out here in the real world, is that might be the way that you might feel when you look at a feed.
Comparison is the thief of joy, as they say.
Well stated.
Thank you.
What is your score? Do you have a score for it?
I think I'm going to give it a solid 90.
I love that.
Yeah.
I would give it, I think I'm gonna go 93.
93.
This
is good. This is going near the top. It feels like. Yay, Encanto.
I'm very excited to see what you guys thought about it. I know that the first Encanto video we made was about Mirabel and whether or not she was going to be a Disney princess. And I feel like when that video went out, I feel like it was during that period of time that maybe not many people had seen it yet. So I'm very curious to see if, as this wave of enthusiasm about this movie kind of rolls out, even this very review itself, I'm curious to see what the response is.
Same.
Whether or not people out there are like, yes, I saw it, I loved it, or I passed on this one.
Right.
There's probably no chance that you have reached this point of the video and have passed on it, but if somehow that is the case...
If you just like watching reviews about movies you haven't seen.
Right. Go watch it.
Yeah. Hopefully we've convinced you.
Otherwise, let us know all of your thoughts about Encanto in the tab section down below.
Guys, as always, thank you so much for watching today's video. Don't forget to leave a like on it if you haven't already, and subscribe so you don't miss any future Disney action from us. If you want to find out whether or not Mirabel will become a Disney princess, you can check out this video right here. And if you want to see if Bruno is actually Alberto's father from Luca, you can check out this video right here. But otherwise, until next time, bye!